You're watching TVC Breakfast. Let's get to our next discussion now. Now, there are more than 30 million people with disabilities in Nigeria, and they face significant barriers in participating in the country's elections. Now, many of them end up not performing their civic duty because of these barriers. Now, as Nigeria counts down to the 2023 elections, the call for inclusion of persons with disabilities is getting louder. The provision for Braille ballot papers for visually impaired persons, sign language interpreters for those with hearing impairment are some of the demands that PWDs have made to the Independent National Electoral Commission. How can the electoral body ensure that PWDs are not excluded from the process in the next elections coming up in 2023? Joining me to discuss this is the Executive Director, Center for Citizens with Disabilities, David Anyele. It's good to have you join me this morning.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah. Now, you have been involved in, policies and legislative processes for and advocacy for people with disability. And as we look forward to 2023 election, what are the items that you are looking for them to change in favor of people with disabilities?
We must thank the National Assembly for, giving us a new Electoral Act 2022, and for President Muhammad Buhari for signing it into law. Over the years, we've been clamoring that certain sections of the Electoral Act be amended to support people with disability participation. It was crafted previously in such a way that it portrays a charity provision. Charity in the sense that it says INEC may. So they are when they are happy, they provide. If they're not happy, they may not provide. So that, controls the behavior of INEC officials, including their systems, towards people with disability participation. So we've been clamoring for the recrafting of that section of the Electoral Act, and graciously we secured it. So now the provision is section 54 of the Electoral Act 2022 provides that INEC shall make provisions for all these.
So they've been mandated to carry out that obligation
to provide it, to ensure that there is accessible electoral process for people with disabilities. So for INEC to achieve this means that they need to go back to review or audit their processes to identify where there are gaps. In the past, during obstacle elections, when we conduct an assessment of INEC provisions for persons with disability participation in specific elections, these issues keep on appearing as gaps that need to be covered. During election days, INEC will come up to say, oh, we've done all those things, we have magnifying lens, we have this. Nobody sees it in the field. Nobody interfaces with it. Nobody gives account to anybody. So if you procure magnifying glasses, if you have braille materials, and you keep it in your store without bringing it to the field, or if you bring it to the field and you train ad hoc staff that are conducting elections for you, at the end of the day, you miss, mainstreaming in your training curriculum some of these, aids that support people with disabilities participation. So an ad hoc staff may not even know that there is a magnifying lens. An ad hoc staff may not even know there is a braille material to support. He wouldn't even know there is a poster, he's supposed to put, at the polling unit to help a deaf person to read the process. He doesn't even understand that there are persons with disabilities who are coming to vote. In fact, certain of the polling unit, the person don't even have a clue. So the rush that comes with election day. So the individual or the individuals managing the election centers will be struggling to make sure that election starts as it ought to. At the end of the day, these gaps are created. So what we have now is that if we don't see it, will hold INEC responsible.
All right. So as we are right now, what engagements are people with disabilities beginning to have with INEC regarding that? It is one thing the Electoral Act has been passed, which gives them the authority and the power and the mandate and the obligation to do that. Is another thing to hold a direct and intentional engagement with INEC to say, okay, now that this electoral law has been passed, let us know what way forward on this is going to be.
So part of things we are doing is to sustain our electoral accountability project. That is to say, monitor INEC vis-a-vis their response to these provisions. Okay. Recognizing that this assent was secured last month, appreciating that there is another election, off-cycle election that is coming up, in Ekiti and Osun State. Sorry. So what it means is that we are going to, organize our tools. We are also going to move to these states to look at what is going on. Already, part of the issues that were flagged in the past around access and participation, in specific to deaf persons, is that during election day, there are no sign language interpreters that can be able to sign for deaf people. Part of the recommendations we have made to INEC in the past is that they should mobilize as many sign language interpreters as possible. Those that could serve as volunteers should equally serve as volunteers to support deaf persons at the polling unit. So in doing that, we've supported INEC in training sign language interpreters. We've done the pilot in Abuja, that in the 5 area councils, we've built the capacity of sign language interpreters across these places. And we also build the capacity of close aids of possible deaf persons within the community on civic education.
Okay.
This is to say that they can do what we call a peer training among their peers. So whatever thing they've learned in this meeting, when they go to their peers who are deaf, to their family members, they could equally be able to share it with them, so that during election day, they can come out and participate without fear of any form of barrier. Also, these individuals who are going to be participating as ad hoc, part of the measures is to sustain and encourage INEC to minimize changing of ad hoc staff, few days to election. Because what normally happens is that, a classical example in Abuja, a few days to election, a new ad hoc staff who are not maybe properly trained or groomed on elections.
With the peculiarities
of some of
where they are going to cover.
Exactly. So when they push them to go and conduct election, most of them may not take steps to observe, issues that has to do with access and participation of all. So these are the areas that we are focusing on to ensure that people with disabilities are not left behind during elections.
All right. Now, this has to do, like you talked about the issue of sign language interpreters, mobilizing them. Now, when we talk about the use of Braille materials, that's totally a different, because you're talking about logistics, you're talking about, papers and all of that. Is it better to train, or what would it take to train ad hoc staff to begin to understand how to read and interpret ballot papers that are coming in as Braille, to know what these people are, what PWDs, whoever is involved, what party he has chosen or candidate he has chosen, as the case may be? Or would it be better to have PWDs employed for that purpose? It's
a mix.
Okay.
Mixture in the sense that
where you don't find
when
one,
you don't find one, you have the other.
Okay.
The materials are properly labeled in INEC logistics manuals. Each material has its own number. While building the capacity of trained ad hoc staff, they also provide, some of these materials. Sometimes they even explain it to them during training. But where you want to train, let's say, 300 ad hoc staff and they're one hall. and you are somewhere one corner of the horse telling them, oh, there's something called this and that. The other person is not even looking at it, he's not even seeing it. All he's waiting for is for deployment so that he can go and conduct the election and go back home. Sometimes some of these things, get mixed up. It's also provide, like the law provide, that a person with disability can only come with an aide who he trusts, if you're a blind person, that can support you get to that place and vote. Most times, when people don't have somebody they trust that can vote for their own candidate, they also struggle. So they will require to go with the Braille so that they can manage and thumbprint where it is provided in order to be sure that they've voted.
They exercise their own franchise, their choice for whom they want.
Exactly. Most times when they get to the polling unit, you see also some of these election officials working. Sometimes they try to impose an aid to such individual. Most blind persons have complained bitterly that they are dissatisfied with that kind of provision. So that is why this Braille material, tactile ballot, as is the case may be, when provided, will guarantee that independence on the individual to to say, yes, I'm voting Mr. A or Party B, And the issue goes also beyond INEC. Political parties have a role to play. We discover that political parties make minimal provisions for persons with disability participation in what they do. Beyond one political party, where we've discovered that most of the political parties have little or no provision for their members with disabilities to participate. Where we have political parties that are disability friendly, that has enough provision for people with disabilities, it is their responsibility to go to the field while campaigning, mobilizing for vote, also speak to the language of people with disabilities within the community where they are seeking for vote. So when a political party is not accessible to a person with disability or it's not inclusive of people with disabilities, the possibility of passing these messages to the nooks and crannies of communities where they are seeking for vote becomes difficult thing. Because basically the people who are supposed to go to tell people how to vote, who to vote, are the political parties.
Exactly.
I don't know if you understand. But these are where we are having also serious challenges.
Now, the talk to us about the issue of data, available data of persons with this special needs. Because if we're talking about sign language interpreters, when it comes to the distribution of those based on polling units, based on districts and all of that, how much? Because there are places you might get to that you might not have any blind person or anybody who needs the Braille service. So how do we handle that kind of spread where we don't have reliable and dependable data of the spread of these people?
So INEC, in their continual voter registration, made provision for data disaggregation by disability. So if you're a person with disability and you want to go for a registration, you need to disclose your disability there, so that INEC will track it. If you're a person with disability now and you're not sure of your whether your card has disability related component, you can equally go. If you are transferring your location to another polling unit, as you are transferring, you indicate you have disability. By so doing, INEC has created a mechanism to mob up data around people with disabilities for different locations. The question now is, are people willing to disclose their disability? That is the issue. Because most times, people are afraid of disclosing their disability because of known fears, stigma, discrimination, and other attitudinal experiences that are negative people with disability receive within the community. Also, officials that are gathering this data, are they able to explain or ask questions on these individuals whether they have disability? I was in an event in Abuja, and we were discussing issues of participation of marginalized population and data. Then I asked participants here, how many of you here disclosed their disability status? I happen to be the only one that discloses disability status. But I asked them, out of the people that are here, all the people that are wearing spectacle, remove your spectacle, will you see? They say they cannot see. But why don't you disclose that you have disability?
Exactly.
And the professor who was there was like, oh, I didn't even know that I'm part of the community. I don't know if you understand. I said, because if you remove your spectacle, you will not see again.
Exactly.
You can't even read what you are reading. And you are asked to disclose your disability, and you refuse to disclose it. Because of this mindset within our people that disability is just when you are blind, totally blind, you cannot see again. No. The moment
so it means there has to be more awareness in this regard for people to know where you fall into. And I think that you mentioned the issue of stigma. Sometimes people just feel that, okay, I am not carrying crutches, or I am not on the wheelchair, so I don't belong in there, and all of that. But that's not the issue. It's just the issue. Do you need any assistance?
Exactly.
Any form of assistance? Do you need any form of assistance so that we know how to assist you? That is what this thing is all about.
It's all about. So because, we've not created the kind of awareness around disability. So people continue to perceive disability as negative. I know how Nigeria behave. The day they discover there is an incentive of being a person with disabilities, there will be rush.
Maybe that is where government will come from.
There will be rush.
And then we'll see people say, I have 3 cousins.
No, you will see all manner of disability. Both known and unknown.
Exactly. The one we know, the one we don't know. It's all right. So let's talk about the issue of awareness creation in the area of voter enlightenment and getting PVCs. Or you mentioned earlier that political parties have a very big role to play. But if the political parties are not coming forth enough, we all have responsibility on our own to ensure that our people, go out there one way or the other. You have been in the forefront of this advocacy. What is happening in that regard, ensuring that PWDs get their PVCs and they are ready to, shoot out on the day of election? So,
private organizations, civil society groups, every day are using, both offline and online, platforms to create awareness on the need for persons with disabilities to go out to register, to participate in election, to know the benefit of participating in election. In fact, many persons with disabilities are indicating interest to contest.
Amazing.
I receive calls from different parts of Nigeria. There is this particular one that always coming from Taraba. He's the only one contesting for House of Assembly, anyone with disability, contesting for House of Assembly in his state.
Amazing.
And he's willing. In different states, many people with disabilities are jumping up because they feel that they can be able to go in to support the state in designing or creating the kind of future all of us desire. I always tell people, we can't continue to be outside the fence, shouting, advocating, speaking to who and the other person. But if you're in the policy seat, if you are part of the policy makers, it will be easier, much, much easier for you to be able to guide, to, tell the state or lead the state on what is expected of them in order to ensure inclusive, electoral process or participation of in elections.
All right. It's really been an enlightened discussion with you on this, David Anyele. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
I'm so happy.
And thank you for what you do at the Center for Citizens with Disabilities. It's really amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very grateful.